Okay guys, today we're adding and subtracting polynomials. Nothing about this is really new except maybe some of these vocabulary words like what a monomial is, a binomial, and a trinomial. So let's talk about what that is real quick. I know a monomial starts with mono. Mono means one, so that means you have one term. So I don't care what the unit is behind it or the variables are behind it. There's only one term, one thing pretty much. So like -9, all I have is regular numbers. 14m, all I have are m's. So a binomial, bi means two. So here's the difference. Notice I have x's and regular numbers. That's two different things. So I don't care what the two things are, but I know there's two different things, which tells me it's a binomial. So I have x's and y's, two different things, binomial. Regular number and x's, two different things. A trinomial, tri means three, which means you're going to have three different things. So here I have A's, I have B's, and C's, three separate different terms. On the next one I have x squareds, I have x's, and I have regular numbers, three different terms, trinomial. And then finally here I have x squareds, which are different than xy's, which are different than y squared, so three separate terms, trinomial. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump through these notes. Like I said, from here on the math should be pretty much review. I'm going to add these two groups together. So I have a 4x minus 5 with parentheses. In front I see nothing, which means those parentheses are unnecessary, so I'm going to drop that down. Okay, on this next set of parentheses I see a plus sign in front. That's the same as having a +1 right there. So really what I'm doing is I'm distributing a +1, multiplying by a +1. Well, a +1 times a +3x is a +3x. A +1 times a +6 is a +6. So notice, when you're distributing a positive or a +1, nothing on the inside of those parentheses change. It stays exactly the same. So now all I have to do is combine my like term. I have x's here and here, so together that gives me 7x's. And then I have a -5 and a +6. Together that's going to give me a +1. So notice, I have x's and I have regular numbers. This is what you call a binomial. I have two different terms. Alright, so on number 2, my first set of parentheses, there's nothing out front telling me I don't really need those, so I'm going to go ahead and drop x squared plus y squared. But in front of my second set of parentheses, I have a minus sign, which is the same thing as a -1, which means I would have to distribute a -1. Well, what happens when I multiply by a -1? A -1 times a +4x squared is going to give me a -4x squared. A -1 times a +3y squared is going to give me a -3y squared. So over here, when we multiplied by a +1, nothing changed. But when you multiply by a -1, it does. Really what it does is, I like to say, it just makes everything opposite. Alright, so now we combine our like terms. I have x squareds and I have x squareds. That's a 1x squared and a -4. 1 plus -4 is a -3x squared. And then I have y squareds here and y squareds here. So this is a 1 and a -3. 1 plus -3 is a -2, and those are my y squareds. So notice I have two different terms. This is what you call a binomial. Alright, on my first set of parentheses, there's nothing out front, so I can go ahead and drop this guy. In front of my second set of parentheses, I see a plus sign. So remember, that doesn't change anything. So really what I'm going to do is drop this one down as well. Remember, do not change anything. Okay, so now what I do, I need to combine my like terms. I have 3x squared and a -3x squared. I notice that those are opposites. Opposites cancel. So now I'm going to look at my xy squareds. I have xy squareds here. I have xy squareds here. Guys, those are not opposites. A -5 and a -5 is going to give me a -10. So I have -10 xy squared. Okay, then I'm going to look at my y cubes. I have a positive y cubed here. I have a negative y cubed here. Those are opposites. Opposites cancel. So this is the only thing that I'm left with. So notice that this is only one term. This is what you call a monomial. Okay, on number 4, in front of the first set of parentheses, there's nothing out front, so I'm going to go ahead and drop this guy down. But in front of the second set of parentheses, I have a negative or a -1, which makes everything opposite. So the opposite of a positive 2x squared is a negative 2x squared. The opposite of a minus 8xy is a plus 8xy. And the opposite of a plus 2y squared is a minus 2y squared. So now I can go ahead and combine my like terms. I have x squareds and I have x squareds. Add 6 and -2 to get a positive 4, x squared. So now I look at my xy's. I have 12xy here. I have 8xy here. I add 12 and 8 to get a positive 20xy. And then finally I'm going to add up my y squareds. I have 4 here and a -2 here. So 4 plus -2 is a positive 2y squared. So notice I have 1, 2, 3 terms. That is a trinomial. Okay, 5 and 6 are just like what we got done doing, so if you would pause the video and try 5 and 6 on your own. When you finish, play the video and check your answers with mine. All right, make sure your matches mine. If you got it right, that's awesome. If you got it wrong, find your mistake and fix it. Notice on problem 5, I have 1, 2, 3 terms. That's what you call a trinomial. On problem 6, I have 2 terms. That's what you call a binomial. Okay, on this one it says some of the measures of polygons are given. P represents the measure of the perimeter. Find the measure of the other side or side. So I know that the perimeter of this entire triangle is 5x plus 2y. But it only gives me 2 sides, and I'm trying to figure out what that third missing side is. Well, if it's a perimeter problem, I know perimeter means to add all sides. So I'm going to take the 2 sides I have and add those together. Combine my like terms. That's going to give me 3x. Combine my y's. It's going to give me a -1y. So I know together, these 2 sides give me 3x and -1y. But that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to find this missing piece. So in order to find the missing piece, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the perimeter of the whole thing, because I know the whole thing is 5x plus 2y. And I'm going to take away the 2 pieces we know, and that's going to leave us with our missing piece. So the whole perimeter is 5x plus 2y, but I need to take away the 2 sides that we know. This piece drops down, but I need to distribute this negative, which remember makes everything opposite. The opposite of a positive 3x is a negative 3x. The opposite of a -1y is a +1y. So now all I have left to do is to combine my like terms. I have x's here and here. A 5 and a -3 gives me 2, and those are x's. I combine my y's, so 2y and 1y will combine to give me a positive 3y. So I know that 2x plus 3y is that missing piece. Okay, problem number 8 is very similar, but this time we have a rectangle. So, a rectangle has 4 sides. I know the perimeter of the whole thing, and it gives me this one side. So since I know this one side, really I know the opposite side as well. My goal is to figure out what is this missing piece right here. Well, I'm going to go ahead and add up the 2 sides I already know. Combine my like terms, that's going to give me 6x squared. My 5 and 5 together will give me a positive 10. So that gives me these 2 sides put together, but I'm trying to find this missing side. So in order to do that, I'm going to take the perimeter of the whole thing all the way around and take away the 2 sides that I already know. So I have the whole perimeter is 14x squared plus 10x plus 12. And I'm going to take away the 2 sides that we put together. And that will give me what's left over. So this piece right here drops. But I have to distribute this negative, which remember makes everything opposite. The opposite of a positive 6x squared is a negative 6x squared. The opposite of a plus 10 is a minus 10. So now I combine my like terms. I have x squareds and x squared. 14 and a negative 6 together gives me 8x squareds. These are my only x's, so those will drop down. And I have a 12 and a negative 10, which together will give me a positive 2. So I know I have this left over. So does that mean that this side right here is 8x squared plus 10x plus 2? Sure doesn't, because I actually have 2 sides left over. And I know both of these are exactly the same. So in order to figure out what each one of these is, I need to take what's left over and divide it by 2, cut it in half, because there's 2 equal pieces. So if I have 8x squared divided by 2, that's going to give me 4x squared. If I have a positive 10x divided by 10, that's going to give me a positive 5x. If I have a positive 2 divided by 2, that's going to give me a positive 1. So that's my missing side. And I know that this over here has to be the exact same thing. Okay, here I have this shape that's made up of 3 shapes. I have 2 triangles, and I have a rectangle in the middle. We're trying to figure out what the total area is. This is the area of my first triangle, the area of my rectangle, and the area of my last triangle. So now we need to add those 3 areas together, which means I need to look for my like terms. So I have x squareds, x squareds, x squared. So I'm going to add those 3 numbers together. That's 3, 1, and 6, which together give me 10. So I have 10x squareds. These are my only x's, so they drop down. And this is my only regular number, so that drops down as well. So I know the total area is 10x squared plus x minus 2. And just to keep bringing it back, that's 1, 2, 3 terms. That's what you call a trinomial. Okay, so it tells me the sides of a triangle have these 3 lengths. It's asking me to find the perimeter. Well, I know perimeter means to add all sides, so I need to add these 3 sides together. So now that I have it set up, I'm going to combine my like terms. I have x's here, here, and here. So that's a 1, a 1, and a 2, which together is going to give me 4 x's. And then I'm going to look at my positive 5, negative 2, and a negative 4. Those 3 numbers would add up to a negative 1. So I know the perimeter of that triangle would be 4x minus 1. These are 2 different terms, so this would be a binomial. Okay, now I need to find the perimeter of a pentagon. It tells me that 3 of the sides are 2x plus 3. 2 of the sides are x minus 1. So I could write 2x plus 3 plus 2x plus 3 plus 2x plus 3. And then add 2 of these guys, x minus 1 plus x minus 1. But a quicker way of doing that is I have 3 of these guys. So I have 3 sides of 2x plus 3. So it's just a little quicker. plus I also have 2 sides of x minus 1. So that's just a little shorter and faster way of doing it. 3 times 2x is 6x. 3 times 3 is a positive 9. 2 times x is a positive 2x. 2 times a negative 1 is a negative 2. So I combine my like terms, x's and x's. So a 6 and a 2 would give me 8x. I have a positive 9 and a negative 2. Together, that would give me a positive 7. So that would be the perimeter of my pentagon. If I would have added up all 5 of those sides, I would get this right here. So it says one rectangle has an area of 7x squared minus 4x plus 12. A second rectangle has an area of 4x squared plus 2x minus 1. How many more square feet is the first rectangle? So I know that this guy is bigger, but I want to figure out how much more bigger. So to figure out how much more, what I'm going to have to do is subtract. Okay, so my first rectangle is 7x squared minus 4x plus 12, and I'm going to subtract the smaller rectangle. So I take my big rectangle, subtract my small rectangle, and that's going to tell me how much bigger it is. So this piece right here will drop down. And I have to distribute this negative, which remember is going to make everything opposite. The opposite of my 4x squared is going to give me a negative 4x squared. The opposite of a plus 2x is a minus 2x. And the opposite of a minus 1 is a plus 1. So all I have to do now is combine my like terms. I have x squareds and x squareds. 7 and a negative 4 combine to give me a 3x squared. Then I look at my x's, a negative 4x and a negative 2x. Negative 4 and a negative 2 combine to give me a negative 6x. Then I see a positive 12 and a positive 1, which will combine to give me a positive 13. So I know the first rectangle is this much bigger than the other one. Okay, on 13, this one is tough for some people to set up. It tells me to subtract, which means take away. So I need to take away 3x minus 6 from this guy right here. So I'm taking this away. So I need to start with 24x plus 18. So I'm going to subtract, take away 3x minus 6. A lot of people that mix these up, they switch these. So it's telling me to subtract, to take this piece away. All right, so I know this guy will drop down. And I have to distribute this negative, which is going to make everything opposite. So the opposite of that positive 3x is a negative 3x. The opposite of a minus 6 is a plus 6. So now I combine my like term, x's and x's. 24 and a negative 3 combine to give me 21x. I have 18 and a positive 6, which will combine to give me a positive 24. All right, later guys.